The warnings for this video includes themes of family trauma and kidnapping. Just a heads up. Now then, let's get on to our last tutorial.
Oh, but wait, Kelsey. I thought you said you had 5 players. This is only 4.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. The 5th player of mine came in halfway through the campaign, so we'll meet them later, I promise. But for now, we're gonna move on to the grand finale tutorial for the beginning of the game. The one and only Natalie Quinn, played by cami-cat herself. Get ready to hear her screams and finally understand why. So then, roll clip. Natalie Quinn is a southern girl who was an archaeology graduate student, getting ready to fly off to her first dig site out of country over in Egypt. It was an exciting thing, but also bittersweet as she found herself already becoming a bit sad at the thought of being away from her family. Her family has always been her entire world. A mother figure missing from her life, but she had her father, Tobin Quinn, and her 2 older brothers, Oliver and Jamie Quinn, who she all loves dearly and they love her. Seeing her looking down, her father suggests they all go on one last hunting trip together. This brightens her up, as she happily agrees, so they gather up their gear, their 2 hunting dogs, and all pile up into their truck. The whole Quinn fam drives out to a nearby forest and begins their search for some game. After some careful walking around and quiet conversations, they finally spot a nice deer they could target. If only one of their hunting dogs didn't suddenly go fucking crazy and start barking like wild. It scared the deer away, and the dog ran off in the opposite direction. Natalie said that she would go and get their dog while they go and follow the deer. It was too nice to miss the chance on. As Natalie chases the dog, she finds the environment around her starts to change and become more like a swamp. She didn't think much of it at the time, as she did live in the south, so swamps were common, but still, it was odd to find one so close to this forest they often traveled. The sound of her dog took her thoughts away, and she finally found him. Their hunting hound, Ollie, was at the edge of some swamp water, pacing back and forth and barking at something she couldn't see. Warily, she readied her rifle and carefully waded through the shallow water. She found no creature or person, but did notice that Ollie stopped barking once she met with a tree in the middle of the water. Even stranger, she found that the tree was carved with symbols and runes she'd never seen before, and hollowed out to make a shelf to hold something. It was then that she heard a small noise, and looked down to see a baby alligator near her leg, crawling over what looked like a small totem. She then realized that this was a forgotten shrine of some sort, and though she was all sparkles over lost things like this, she also showed it respect by replacing the totem back onto the shelf, cleaning up the shrine, and simply taking pictures on her phone. The baby alligator watched her, and with another small she left it in peace and returned to her dog. Ollie seemed to be on edge, but did end up listening to follow after Natalie when she gave the trained words of command. But it wasn't long after that Natalie herself became on edge. As they walked back, she found no signs of her family. Even the farther she walked, she heard and saw nothing. Nothing except... oh no. She found a very large reptilian footprint and a torn collar. That was when she heard a gunshot, and finally heard the voices of her family shouting in the distance. With all her energy and her remaining hunting hound following her, she bolted towards the sounds. Soon, Natalie found herself in a heavily foggy swamp, trekking through thick mud as she went towards the sounds of the shouts and the gunshots. The sounds of heavy, thunking footsteps, like moving tree trunks, resonated in the distance. A dry, droning roar shaking the air. But she only cared about the sounds of her family. Running straight towards their voices, she found them. Her eldest brother, Oliver, holding their father, who was knocked out and bleeding from his head. The second brother, Jamie, standing protectively in front of them, pointing his rifle out into the curtain of fog. She tries to go to them, but Jamie yells for her to stay back, to run away. It's too dangerous. It's too big. but Natalie absolutely refuses and goes to stand with her brother, wielding her own rifle and aiming in the same direction as him. That's when she sees it. 2 glowing golden eyes piercing through the fog, a looming large shadow that lurches forward, and she can start to see its reptilian feet, but not its body, as it's covered and draped in foliage, vines, and moss. If only the head were the same. As Natalie stares in shock at the golden eyes leering at her through the sockets of a giant alligator skull. There's no time to react as it roars, and her and Jamie are sent flying back from its might. Her brother crashes into the other members of her family, and they all proceed to lose consciousness from the collision and their own wounds. Natalie was left as the only one standing, catching her footing and looking back at this beast. Drool and muck dripping from its maw, it lurched forward again, and that's when Nat remembered the runes from the shrine. Believing they were symbols of protection, she quickly got her hunting knife and carved them into the ground around her and her family. Seeing these runes, the beast did stop, but not for the reason that Natalie was hoping for. Its eyes flared with anger as it spoke out, the voice like gravel and decay. "How dare you use what you do not even know the meaning of?" And it stepped right on top of it, showing it had no effect. But it revealed that it did know what it was, and Natalie used that. Natalie apologized and pleaded with it, saying how she is only human and they make mistakes, that maybe if she was taught, then she could properly respect it. Maybe if this beast told them what they did wrong, then they could apologize and rectify their mistake. They can redeem themselves and do better. The beast scoffed at her as, through a successful persuasion roll, it loomed over her, challenging her. "You wish to prove me wrong? You wish to show me your redemption? Very well, then. When I call upon you, you will prove yourself. For now, I will show you mercy, and you will sleep." Before Natalie could respond, the slithering, thick tail of the beast whipped her head, and her vision went black. When she woke up, she was back in the forest, her hound Ollie looking at her face and whining. Besides her dog, she was alone. Her family was gone. She didn't scream. She didn't panic. She went into shock and felt herself a failure in wanting to save them. She questioned what she had done. What did she do wrong? What they had done to anger it. Tears rolled down her cheeks, and her head hung in anguish. That's when she noticed a pool of water and her reflection. Her reflection showed something that wasn't there before. A golden flower sat atop her head. It looked like it was tucked behind her ear, but no. When she brought her fingers up to feel it, she could tell that it was attached to her head, grown from her skull itself. And deep within her, she knew this was her connection to that beast. This was the symbol of her agreement and her participation of its coming trials. The next moments went by in a blur to her, as a college friend found her, having gone out searching for her when she nor her family would answer any calls, and their home was found empty. Her friend and personal NPC, Hanya, took her back to her home to recover. But sitting in her house was a strange woman with all manner of books, documents, and papers of Natalie's family organized out on their dining table. This is where she met the third NPC boss, Rena Alve, the one in charge of the intelligence division. Her eyes were apathetic as she was riddled with various scars, her most notable one being her burnt left eye. one could only guess what did it as she smoked a cigarette. Natalie pulled a gun at first, but Rena wasn't fazed at all, and just calmly talked with her. Natalie only put her gun down after Hanya intervened and told her that he actually knows Rena, that Rena is actually one of his bosses. There, Rena introduced her syndicate, and how Hanya is a high-ranking member amongst the Combat Specialties division. And she also went on to invite Natalie to join them. Natalie was taken aback, but figuring they were all professionals among the odd and supernatural, this would be the best way for her to learn how to save her family. And so, Natalie Quinn joined the Atlantis Syndicate, becoming a member of the Intelligence Division. And from there, she went by Quinn. Just Quinn.
I love my daughter. Everyone deserves to look at my daughter. Everyone needs to look at my daughter right now.
So, yeah, that's what happened to Cammy's first ever tabletop character, and how her PC joined into the shenanigans. Notice how there was a theme of just every single one of their characters being knocked out in the tutorial? Yeah, fun fact, that's not something I planned, but then when my players joked about it, I just, oh, yeah, sure, that's gonna happen now. Everyone's gonna get knocked out cold. Just writing in my GM notes like, yeah, sure. And also, to some fans of cami-cat, I'm sure that these characters I'm working on in the video look familiar to you, which you would be right. These are the characters that are actually in Cammy's video of her original song, Hymn of the Lost. That song is based on her experience with Quinn's personal story in Atlantis. So I hope you all look forward to this. I'll also link the mentioned video in the description if you don't know what I'm talking about. But anyways, with that, all the tutorials are wrapped up. We now know how all these starting player characters join the syndicate. So, thank you all for listening. From here on out, we begin the rapids of the Atlantis journey. And well, I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep your heads above water.